Good morning, everyone. My name is David Sumner, Professor Emeritus of Journalism at Ball State University. And today I'll be discussing the athletic career of Amos Alonzo Stagg, who is most frequently recognized for his accomplishments as a football coach at the University of Chicago between 1892 and 1933, when the school was a part of the Big Ten and his teams won 7 Big Ten championships and 2 national championships. He had the most lifetime wins of any college coach until he was surpassed by Alabama's Bear Bryant in 1982. His football honors and recognition are numerous. He was chosen the top All-America coach of all time in 1930 by a unanimous vote of 15 college coaches. Pop Warner ranked second and Newt Rockne ranked third in their poll. He's also known for more than 24 innovations in play strategies. Sports Illustrated said of him in 1957, if any single individual can be said to have created today's game, Stagg is the man. He either invented outright or pioneered every aspect of the modern game, from such basics as the huddle, shift, and tackling dummy to refinements such as the T formation strategy. Yet his accomplishments in other sports are largely neglected by sports historians. Most biographies barely mention his coaching of baseball, basketball, and track, or serving on 7 U.S. Olympic committees and coaching the U.S. track and field team at Olympics. The purpose of this paper, therefore, is to recognize his coaching accomplishments in all 4 sports and reassess his athletic legacy. Besides his membership in the College Football Hall of Fame as both a player and a coach, he was an inaugural member of the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame in 1959. He helped Jim Naismith create the game of basketball at the International YMCA School, now known as Springfield College, and he played in the first public basketball game between faculty and students, which students won 5-1, but Stagg scored the only basket for the faculty team. He became a nationally famous baseball pitcher as a Yale undergraduate during the late 1880s. Thanks to his pitching, Yale won 5 consecutive conference championships between 1886 and 1890. He won 34 games, lost 8, and tied 1, striking out 241 batters. He beat Harvard 15 times and Princeton 14 times. And in 1888, he struck out 20 Princeton batters, only allowing 2 hits. The New York Times reported on this game saying, quote, Stagg eclipsed all his former brilliant feats on the diamond today. He made the remarkable record of 20 strikeouts. Stagg's performance has never been equal between teams of equal quality, and this will go on record as one of the most memorable intercollegiate games. He also received contract offers from 6 professional baseball teams, but turned them all down because he wanted to attend Yale's Divinity School and become a Presbyterian minister. So at Yale, he played baseball for 5 years, 4 as an undergraduate and 1 during his first year in Divinity School. And he played football during his senior year and first year in the Divinity School. Led by the coaching of the legendary Walter Camp, widely known as the father of American football, the Yale team won 15 and lost only 1 during 2 seasons. After finishing at Yale, he went to the International YMCA School. By this time, he had decided he wanted to become a coach rather than a Presbyterian minister because he didn't feel he was a very good preacher. After he arrived at Chicago in 1892, and during the next 41 years, he coached football, basketball, baseball, and track teams. He organized intercollegiate basketball and track tournaments during the summers that attracted as many as 1,000 high school athletes from 33 states. He organized Chicago's first baseball team in the spring of 1893 and coached the team until 1912, compiling a record of 278 wins, 166 losses that included 19 winning seasons, only one losing season, and 4 conference championships. The most unique baseball tradition he developed at Chicago were the exchange trips he arranged with Japanese universities every 5 years between 1910 and 1930. Most games were played against Waseda University and Keio University, 2 well-known Japanese universities. In exchange, he invited the teams to play Chicago and other big teams in the US the following year. These tours generated immense favorable newspaper publicity in both countries and served as a recruiting tool for prospective athletes. He coached track and field for 35 seasons from 1894 to 1928, while the team had 18 winning seasons, 10 losing, and 7 break-even seasons. His overall 35-year record in track meets was 102 wins, 87 losses. He also coached the team to 4 Big Ten outdoor track titles and 3 indoor championships. Chicago athletes had 5 Big Ten conference records, which equaled Michigan's 5 and surpassed Wisconsin and Iowa, which had 3 record holders. He also served on the U.S. Olympic Committee for the Games in St. Louis, London, Stockholm, Antwerp, Paris, and Amsterdam, and Los Angeles between 1904 and 1932. He coached the 400 and 800 meter runs and the 1600 meter relay and the hammer throw. He is shown here on the ship to the London Olympics in 1908. To his immediate right is his wife, and along with 2 University of Chicago faculty members. One thing that impressed me during my research about the University of Chicago's early history is that it accepted women and minorities from its beginning in 1892. Stagg certainly favored women's athletics. He hired women faculty members in his athletic department and initiated women's teams in several sports during the 1890s after he arrived in Chicago. So besides the coaching track and field in Chicago and the Olympics, he started the interscholastic track meets and football competitions, which went on for about 30 years, attracting high school athletes from all over the country. And I don't have a slide to illustrate this one, but he had these interscholastic competitions in both basketball and track. Starting in 1902, they grew to more than 1,000 participants in 1930, with states from as far away as Massachusetts, Florida, and Washington. The 1927 basketball tournament reached an all-time high, with participation from 43 teams in 33 states. Chicago's tournaments were not the first in the Big Ten. University of Illinois was first, followed by Wisconsin, Michigan, and Northwestern. Chicago's meets, however, achieved a national reputation and following that the others did not, partly because of such a large, centrally located city. But these competitions began to decline in the 1930s because of the transportation and travel costs, as well as the onset of the Great Depression. Coaching basketball. He coached basketball. He organized the first basketball team in Chicago in 1894 and coached it for the first 3 seasons. In 1896, he took the team to Iowa, where the team defeated Iowa 15-12. This is known in basketball history as the first collegiate game to be played with 5 players on a side, which was an idea of Stagg and the Iowa coaches, since they had not both known each other for several years. Before this, basketball teams had no set number of players on a team. During his last 5 years at Chicago, Stagg didn't coach baseball or track, but as athletic director, he continued to supervise the coaches, team scheduling, and all other athletic activities, as well as coaching football. But that job ended in 1932 when President Robert Hutchins who called the Boy Wonder, relieved Stagg of his athletic duties. Stagg had come to Chicago as president when he was 30 years old. A year later, Hutchins removed him as football coach, citing the 70-year-old mandatory retirement rule. Now, Hutchins was known for being strongly against athletics, especially football. He didn't believe intercollegiate had any part of a major research university, and so he abolished the football program in 1939, 6 years after Stagg had left to go to University of Pacific. But immediately, as soon as his resignation became public, he began receiving coaching inquiries and offers from around the country. And Stagg accepted the offer from College of the Pacific, where he coached for another 14 years, winning National Coach of the Year in 1943 after upsetting such powerhouses as Southern Cal, UCLA, and California. After that, he accepted part-time coaching jobs at Susquehanna University, where his son was the head football coach, and 8 years at Stockton College. He never fully retired from coaching until the age of 98, then only because of failing eyesight. Just a word about his family life. When he married his wife, Stella, he was a 31-year-old Chicago coach, and she was an 18-year-old sophomore. They had a daughter and 2 sons, and both sons became college football coaches and athletic directors. They were married almost 70 years, and she became his de facto assistant coach, who scouted opponents, charted plays, and kept game statistics, even frequently being quoted in the sports media. Her New York Times obituary said, quote, "Mrs. Stagg was said to be the greatest living woman expert on football during her husband's career." So what is Stagg's legacy? Besides his many football honors, innovations, and inventions, I believe his athletic genius and his versatility comprise his legacy. Coming from a poor family and never graduating from high school until he was 21, he had to work his way through Yale with jobs and small scholarships. I think he felt driven to prove himself as better than his peers at Yale and Chicago, where most of the faculty members had doctorates and most students came from affluent families. I believe he had an underlying sense of inferiority that drove him to overachieve, outwork, and finish first among his peers. He was honest to a fault, but his driving ambition sometimes brought him into conflict with peer coaches and university administrators. But he also had a great sense of humility and never sought the spotlight. He asked Chicago and Pacific not to name their stadiums after him, but they did anyway. And there's still a Stagg Field at the University of Chicago. He turned down a movie offer from MGM that would have earned him $300,000 in 1943 money. A year before his death, he told John Underwood, a Sports Illustrated reporter, that he only wanted to be remembered, quote, as an honest man. So his athletic legacy is wide-ranging through 4 sports, known particularly for his innovations in basketball and football, his leadership in the Olympics, as well as his long and baseball honors, particularly as a Yale undergraduate. Certainly, I think he will be remembered and is remembered for his character and humility and honesty and his commitment to amateur athletics. Thank you for your time. If you'd like to know any more about Stagg, I do have a biography that I published last September, focusing primarily on his football career, but there are 3 chapters that discuss in part or all his career in these other sports for which he became an innovator as well. Thank you so much, and now we can have some questions and discussions.